Hi, I'm Bill Malone, and I want to welcome you to Scared to Death. This is a movie I made actually in 1979, sort of in the wake of Alien, and it was my very first film. And for me, it was a lot like film school, really, because I really didn't have a lot of experience in making movies. And the only thing I'd ever done before that was I shot a little comedy with a little home tape recorder, video tape recorder, which was one of the first ones out. Anyway, so I really was desperate to make some kind of a movie, and nobody was likely to be giving me any money anytime soon. So I did what you're absolutely not supposed to do, which is to sell mortgage the house, sell the cat and dog and the car, and go make this movie. It was actually made for $74,000, and all my friends said I was nuts, and of course they were right. So. But it was shot in February, I believe February of '79, and it was shot over a period of about 4 weeks. The film was actually shot in regular 16 at the time, which is not very many films were being shot in 16. Everyone was shooting 35, but I just couldn't afford it. So actually I went out and bought an Arriflex to shoot the film with. And knowing that I would probably wind up selling the camera when we were done with it. And actually it turned out to be a good thing, because I wound up selling the camera for more than what the camera cost, because the price of the camera kept escalating while we were filming. So I actually wound up with the camera for free. It was shot in the San Fernando Valley. We shot, there was some stage stuff, mostly it was on location. And we stole a lot of locations, which is what you do when you don't have any money. And but the sets, we actually built these sort of sewer sets, which the sewer sets were built in this guy's warehouse who made Catalina yachts. He sort of took pity on us and gave us this building that he was using to store his boats. In fact, it was mostly empty. It had a couple boats and a couple cars in there, and we built this. The sewer set, which was only about 40 feet long and had a little return on it, but it had wild walls, and we were able to keep moving the walls around and getting more mileage out of it. I want to say that the hero of this movie really is Patrick Prince, who was the director of photography. He was a hero for a number of reasons. First of all, he not only shot the film, but he built a lot of the sets. He built the sewer set and a lot of the other things. He was a master carpenter as well. And but the entire film was actually lit with, I think we had 4 1Ks and 1 2K, and those were our big guns. And this is at a time when the film stocks were very slow. I mean, we were shooting with ASA 100 film, so I don't know how we did it. We bought one super speed lens, which I think was a T12, and it was a 12 millimeter, which is fairly wide, and the entire film, almost the entire movie, is shot with that one lens. So that's how we sort of worked our way around it. When I decided to make the film, I was sort of thinking, what kind of a movie could I make where I could get some sort of production value without spending very much money? And the idea of a monster film came up because I had a background. I'd been working just previously for Downpost Studios, which was a mask making company in Glendale. I made Halloween masks, and I was sort of their head sculptor. So I thought, well, if I make a monster movie, that's probably the best thing I could do. So I spent about 3 months building this creature called the Syngenor, which stood for Synthesized Genetic Organism, and it was a sort of loosely an H.R. Giger inspired thing. That and sort of the creature from the Black Lagoon together. And that was made out of foam and rubber, and a lot of it was sort of pieced together. But that was sort of our main hero prop. Actually, I have a model here. I'll show you. Actually, it's become sort of famous, this thing. They make models. There's actually a bunch of model kits of this thing. But this was actually the monster. And the only actual sculpted parts really were the head and the hands and the feet and the chest piece. And I think some of this, maybe this back piece here. And the rest of it was all built out of foam and just sort of glued together. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. A friend of mine plays the monster. Bryce Eller, formerly Kermit Eller, he changed his name. I guess he didn't like Kermit. Too many frog jokes, I guess. Anyway, but he played the monster, and he also played Darth Vader in all the personal appearances for Star Wars, interestingly enough. But he was like 6'5". He was 6'5", 6'6", and he, we built it on him. And I was too stupid to know that we shouldn't actually build the costume on him. So we had this like leotard that he was wearing, and I was gluing stuff to him. And he came in one day and he said, I've got burns all over my body. And sure enough, he had like these giant red spots all over. So anyway, the hazards of independent filmmaking. In a lot of ways, the film was blessed because we, got a lot of support from the people that were digging in and helping us, and Jody Moffat, who was my production manager, had never done anything like this before, but she worked really hard, and she managed to get us a lot of things for free, and we, like I said, we shot for 4 weeks, which was a fairly long schedule for a low-budget movie. We just didn't know any better, quite honestly, and we had stuff scheduled that went all over the city. Well, as you probably know, getting a movie distributed is a very tricky business, and I've been asked a lot, how did Scared to Death get distributed? And it was actually kind of funny because when we set out to make the film, I thought, I'd always heard, well, you should have a distributor. So I literally called every distributor in town and said, I'm making this movie. Are you interested? And I couldn't even get anybody on the phone. Actually, the only person who called me back was Lee Thornburg, who had a company called Lone Star Pictures, and they were some crazed Texas oilmen or something who wanted to get in the movie business. And they had actually a number of films, sort of softcore porn things, and they wanted to do some sort of legitimate thing. And they actually did a deal with me where they'd distribute the picture and cover the post-production costs, which is what they did initially. And when we finished the picture, being that they were from Texas, they wanted the preview or actually have the premiere of the film in Texas. So I, packed up and flew to Dallas where they were going to have the premiere. And what I didn't know was that the premiere was at a drive-in theater outside of Dallas. And I brought my wife at the time, who was one of the leading ladies of the film, and we were sort of in the concession stand. I had like this pod left over from the movie, and we're sitting there, and people couldn't even guess who we were sitting there at this desk, and while they're buying popcorn from the concession stand, they're going, okay, what is this all about? And, well, we made the movie, and it was pretty hysterical, but it was great seeing your movie in the theaters, and it did play a number of places. I think the weirdest thing though is I was on an airplane once, and somebody asked me what I did, and I mentioned that I made a bunch of films, and mentioned Scared to Death. He says, "Oh, I saw that on a submarine in the South Pacific." So I guess it was a big hit in the Navy, I guess. Well, actually, I was very fortunate because the first sale that we got was from Malaysia, and they paid $90,000 for it. Now, keep in mind, the movie only cost $74,000 to make, so we were already into profit with our first thing. Now, of course, the distributors, raped and pillaged as they normally do, and but the movie actually was successful enough that we were able to see quite a bit of money come back on it, and which was actually very fortunate for me because it was sort of thin thereafter. Nobody was beating down my door to make another movie like Scared to Death. So if you're buying this, God bless you. Sometime after the film actually came out, I mean, it did well enough. Oddly, I get this phone call from my from Rand Marlis, who was the producer on the film. He was handling the legal stuff, and he calls me up and says, "Do you know where the movie is at on Variety?" And I went, "No." And it was like number 16. We actually made it to number 16 on the charts, which was pretty amazing. So we did reasonably well. And later, sometime later, I got a call, and this producer wanted to make a sequel to it. And originally, I was going to do the sequel, and then I had an opportunity to go make Creature, which was a sort of another drooling monster, this time in space, sort of much more alien-esque than this one was. And that was a bigger budget film, so I sort of walked away from it and let the writer and another director take over. So that film got made, which I really had nothing to do with it. I had actually already built the monsters for it, and so I just turned over the monsters to them, and they went off and made that. So I really had nothing to do with it other than just making the monsters. I wanted to show you this. This is what's left of the old boy here. This is actually one of the original heads. This is sort of the stand-in head because it didn't have any movement. The actual one, the hero one, actually moved, but it rotted away years ago. As you can see, this guy is in sad shape here, but that's the original Sinjanor. And here's actually the Sinjanor hands, which were made over leather gloves. I think I can still put these on without them completely falling apart. There we go. Interesting about the cast of the film. I actually originally Rick Springfield, Jesse's girl, that guy, was supposed to be in Scared to Death. He was going to star in it. He was on at that time. He was on a soap opera, and he'd just gotten his record contract, and he was recording, but he was going to be in Scared to Death. And the night before we're supposed to start shooting, I get this phone call, and it's Ricky going, "I can't be in your movie." I went, "Okay, is there a reason why?" "Yeah, I'm going to miss acting class." And I went, "You want to run that one by me again?" "Okay, you're going to miss acting class, and you can't be in the movie." "Okay." So I said, "All right." So I hung up the phone, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm shooting tomorrow. Who can I get to be in my movie? And I remembered a young actor named John Stinson, who was in an improv class thing that I had seen. And so I looked for his phone number. I found it. I called him. I said, "John, now keep in mind, it was pouring rain this night." And I called up John. I said, "John, I'm making this movie. I want you to be the star in it, the lead in it." And he goes, "Okay, yeah, great. I'm really interested, and I'll come over and get a script." So I hang up the phone. No more do I hang up the phone. Then I get another phone call from Rick. Rick's going, "I really can't do this to you. I'm going to be in the movie." And so I said, "Okay." So I hang up the phone. I've got to call John back, and I'm going, oh my God, how am I going to explain? I called John back, and I said, "Here's what's happened." I explained the situation. He was very kind about it. I hang up. No more do I hang up the phone. Rick calls back. Says, "I can't be in your movie. I thought about it. Yeah, I'm going to miss too much acting class." And I said, "Fine, Rick. You don't have to be in the movie." So now I've got to call John back, and I've got to grovel. I'm just groveling to him. "John, please, you got to be in my movie." And God bless him, he said yes, and he did a sensational job. And what was interesting was Diana Davison, who was the other leading lady in the film, was Rick's girlfriend. And during filming, Diana and John got together, fell in love, and got married. And so anytime I talk to John, I said, "Well, how is it to have Jesse's girl?" Well, actually, the roller skating scene was kind of funny because, when you send out a casting call, you always go, "Okay, I need people who can roller skate." And of course, the actors will always say, "Oh yes, I roller skate great," and stuff like that. And of course, none of these kids had ever roller skated before. I think maybe one of them had. And we had this long shot where they have to go skating down this like 3 floors of this parking structure, and we had spotters over on the side because they'd like crash into like stuff, and, pillars and things, and we were trying to always pick them up off the floor and see if they were okay. But the next thing I got really off this was Creature. Moshe Diamant, who had seen Scared to Death, said, "I really want you to make a movie just like this. I want to do it in space," and I said, "Well, yeah, okay." So I wasn't keen about doing like an Alien sort of knockoff, but you know, he was offering a fair amount of money to actually make the film. Wasn't offering me a lot of money, but a lot of money to make the picture, for me anyway at the time. And I think the budget of that film was like $700,000, which to me was like a fortune. And so I went off and made Creature, but yeah, I mean, nobody was beating down my door after that, or even after Creature, and understandably so. I mean, they're just you know, they're just knockoff movies, you know. So it took me a long time to recover from that, and usually people, by the way, usually people disavow their work on these kind of movies, but you know, quite honestly, I'm happy I made Scared to Death, and it was like a tremendous learning experience, and I learned to work with crews and work quickly, and so it was a great opportunity for me, really. Actually, I should sort of bring you up there. What happened really was after, you know, after Scared to Death and Creature, I guess, you know, like I said, nobody was really beating down my door, and so I went for a long sort of dry spell, and I actually went back to college because I really felt that I needed to do some more work, and I took directing classes at UCLA and studied with Ted Post, and got a call sometime in the late 80s from a friend of mine, a guy named Bill Froelich, who was doing a show called Freddy's Nightmares, and they needed somebody who knew horror and could come in and do some episodes. So I went in and did about 3 episodes of Freddy's Nightmares, and from that got my Directors Guild card, which was a big moment for me. And then a couple years later did a thing called it was called just Dark Justice. We used to call it Just Darkness. It was a sort of crime time, after prime time shows. You know, it showed at 2 o'clock in the morning or something. But that was kind of a fun show to do because the producers really didn't care about the movie, the show, and you could do any crazy thing you wanted to do. So I tried out a lot of different sort of experimental things on that show, and then it was about 3 years later I got a call from one of the producers on that show, who was now doing Tales from the Crypt, but by this time they were in season 6, and he said, you know, we've got this bottle show, and we'd like you to come in and direct one. And so I went in and did an episode called Only Skin Deep, and by that time I had been percolating for quite a while, and actually went into that show figuring I was sort of a kamikaze pilot, and I thought, well, this is the last thing I'll ever do, so I might as well just make my show, and you know, and if they fire me, they can fire me. So I just sort of pulled out all the stops that I had at the time, and expected to get fired, actually, and I got a call from Joel Silver, who called me into his office, and I was expecting him to yell and scream at me, and he went off about how much he loved the show, and so I wound up doing a number of other things, and more Tales from the Crypt, and then a show called Perversions of Science, and ultimately wound up getting a call from Joel and Bob Zemeckis wanting me to develop House on Haunted Hill. So I spent about a year developing House on Haunted Hill, and shot that in 1999, and that got released and of course did very well. And from that, you know, sort of continued working, you know. So now I'm, it's kind of funny because doing this, you know, this little extra here, I'm actually back doing kind of the same thing I did on Scared to Death. I decided I really wanted to go back and make an indie movie. So I, you know, mortgaged the house and sold the cat and dog again, and got some investors, and we actually made a picture called Parasomnia, which I'm actually working on right now, and going to get released here shortly. So we'll see how it does. I'll keep my fingers crossed. And if this doesn't work out, you'll see me in the back alleyways of Studio City drinking the light.